Hi everyone, it's Donelle McAdams here for our Saturday evening fun. Today we're going to be doing a table mat or wall hanging called Buttons and Bows. And so I have put the handout on, I think, 4 different places this time. So it's on the Sew Steady page, it's on Westerly, it's on my Facebook page, SewBizMarian.com, and it's also on All Things Quilting and Sewing with Donelle McAdams. So several places. This is just the first of 2 sessions. And so I have put the supplies here that we would be using. There may be some other things too that we will be using. But as far as the project supplies that you would want to gather up for making this week, obviously you can make this and then next week you could quilt along with me. Because tonight what we're going to be doing, or this afternoon what we're going to be doing, is creating the project. So I'm going to have some hints and tips for you regarding piecing and pressing and measuring for borders and things like that. Now, when this is finished, this wall hanging will be somewhere in the area of like 36 by 36. You can use it as a wall hanging or a table mat or whatever else you might want to use. Now, you'll notice over here the products by Westerly. What we're going to be doing is we are going to put this as, we're going to be using an 8-point crosshair square. We're going to be using the ruler work foot. And then I wanted to show you the templates that we're going to be using. Now, you might use something else. That's perfectly fine. Most of you are going to find the Spinifex 4 because that's part of the sampler set. So this is the Spinifex 4. I need to get my piece of fabric here so I can show you what it looks like. So this is Spinifex 4. You've probably used that a lot. We're going to be using that template. We're actually going to even be using it in the borders. So we're going to use it a couple places. And then another template that we're going to be using is what's called the Circles on Quilts. And on the template it just says COQ for Circles on Quilts. Wreath number 16. And this is the 7.5. So if you were to purchase this in the whole set, there are multiple sizes. We're going to be using the 7.5. And I'm also going to teach you how to use this echo part right up at the top. So those are the 2 templates that we're going to be using. And, you know, as we go along, there might be something else that I pull in. I'm not sure, but I think that's all I'll actually need. So down here in the corner are what we're going to be using fabric-wise. I didn't say, like, go out and buy exactly this amount of fabric. You can see here what you need. I'm actually using my border fabric is the same as my number 1 fabric. You can use it different. You can use it the same. So totally up to you what you do. So I'm going to start by talking about the thread real quickly. We're going to be using a 60 weight thread. You've heard me talk about piecing. And if you'll piece with 60 weight thread, then whenever you get to a seam, you're going to be able to go right over that. So if we want to pull the camera in here so we can get right in line with the machine, I have taken the time. First of all, I changed my needle. I'm not using a 90 top stitch to piece with because I'm piecing with my 60 weight thread. I have that on the bottom, on the bobbin, and I also have it on the top. Now, I'm going to tell you, because I've run into this week, there is a hole in a straight stitch foot, okay? Your needle, when you're in center position, should be dead center in that hole. But if it's not, please don't panic. You can move it left or right to get it centered. Now, mine's in the center, but if I were just looking at that needle and this line that's on my crosshair or my I can't even think of the grid glider. Thank you. The grid glider, I might get this lined up, but it would be better to just put my needle down into that needle plate just a little bit. Now, I'm going to tell you something because I'm telling you today, a lot of the home ec teachers are going to be jumping right out of that screen at you. I'm going to make sure that I have this in line, but I don't just want to turn this needle down clear into that. So I am taking my needle and I am rotating my hand wheel just enough to put it down into there. So when I do that, I'm always rotating towards me. You should never, ever rotate your hand wheel backwards. I used to have a machine that, oh my goodness, it would just get so messed up. And even with the least little bit in reverse. So make sure that you don't do that. Now I'm taking my straight edge here and I'm putting it right up against my needle. And so now you can see that I've got that lined up right with that line. If I didn't, I would have taken this whole sheet off of there so that I could line it up. Now I'm not using this line. I'm using this line because I want to get my 1/4 inch exact. So now when I start to stitch, I'm not going to rotate that hand wheel any way, shape, or form, any different direction. I'm just simply going to take my needle and put the needle down. Now, if you don't have a needle down, you're going to continue your hand wheel all the way around, still coming towards you. Now, this way I can go ahead and pull up that bobbin thread and I can be ready to start stitching. Whenever I start stitching, if I haven't just cut my thread, which obviously I haven't because I rotated my hand wheel, I want to, well, I'm going to have to do it again, ladies and gentlemen, if you're out there. Okay. There we go. It's such a fine thread that I want to make sure I've got a hold of it, and it keeps going back down.
Gisela wants to know, what foot are you using for tonight?
Tonight I'm using my 1/4 inch piecing foot. You may want to use a regular straight stitch foot that's like this, but this one here is my multi-purpose foot. I'm so happy she asked that question because I should have explained this. And the reason I could put my needle over to the side and get a 1/4 inch. That's not a problem with this foot. I would need to get out my A foot, which I don't have out here. And the reason for that is this foot on the back has this little opening or a little bit of a bridge across there. And this is to allow your decorative stitches to slide right underneath here. Well, if you're using this for a 1/4 inch foot with this, your fabric's having a little bit of a party underneath there, and it doesn't hold it flat. So that's a great question. Now, if I had my A foot for this machine, a machine I'm working on is a Viking Epic right now, and if I had my A foot, this would totally be flat, and I could do that. I would not be using the center needle position. I would position the needle over so that it was a 1/4 inch from the right edge of that foot. So I hope that makes sense.
And we also had a question again on what size and brand of needle are you using?
Right now I'm using an 80, and this one happens to be, I believe, an Inspira or a Schmetz needle. I'm not sure which one. That's the ones that are recommended for this machine. I always tell you to get the ones that are recommended for your machine. Any other questions? Those are great ones. I'm sorry I failed to answer that before she asked it, but I'm certainly glad that you asked that. Okay, I have my blocks here, and I have, what do I have, Megan? 8? I have 8 blocks that are my 5-inch squares. That's these, I believe.
Yeah, because of your background fabric, you need 8. From your bows, it's 12.
Okay, so my bows are this one right here. This is my bows. This is going to make my bows. So that's the one I have 12 of them. So what I'm going to be doing, and this is part of, this is a class where you're learning things, but we don't give you every single instruction, obviously. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to make 2 stacks, and it's just going to be a stack of 2. I've got my one fabric, it doesn't matter which one it is. This happens to be my background, and this one is my bow. So I put 2 of those right sides together. And then I make the reverse of that over here. So I'm going to have my background fabric on top, right sides together with my bow fabric, 5-inch squares. Now, if I were in class and you were sitting in front of me, I would be saying, now, which is my bow fabric? So I can hear you out there. You're saying, it's the blue dot. It's the blue dot. Okay, it is the blue dot. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a third piece of the blue dot, and I'm going to be folding it exactly in half, wrong sides together. Do not press it. Don't even finger press it. Okay? Don't press it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up this sandwich over here, and I'm simply going to slide this in here and match that top edge. So right there I've got my top edge matched, and I'm going to be able to match up this side, and I'm laying this little sandwich piece right back together. Now what I want to do is I want to make sure that all of that is right there flat together. I'm going to get a different one because this one didn't get pressed and that little edge is not acting right. So there we go. Laying that in there. Laying this right sides together. So what I'm going to be doing now is I've got those edges together. I'm going to put just a pin in there because I want to show you again what this is like. So if I open this up, remember we laid our little sandwich down here. I open this up, I've got this little piece laying in the middle. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch this 1/4 inch from the edge. And I have to find my little starter block. I think that would be just a good place to get a piece out of the trash can for me. So what I've got here is a piece from something I was doing that I don't need anymore. I'm just going to put that underneath here, put my foot down, and this is starter piece, starter block. And so now I'm going to set my foot right up against there. And when I stitch off of that, then I'll cut it off later. I want my needle to stop down, and I never want to sew over a pen. So take those pins out when you get to them. And you can see if you've got a grid glider, I'm guiding right along that line. Because you don't want to watch your needle. You want to make sure you've got your edge right lined up. Now, for those of you that are unit piecers and keep going, you would just do, in this case, we're going to have 5 blocks of this, 4 blocks of this. So what I'm going to do here, because I'm not piecing in units, I'm just going to go ahead and cut this apart. And now I have this piece out to this side, and I have this little piece that stands up. It's going to get flipped back this way, and now we're just simply going to take this little sandwich, and it's going to go inside of this one. So since we want this to be opposites, I'm going to put this here, and you'll see in just a minute how that's going to work. So I'm taking all of those and lining them up so that when this flips back, I've got this one on the top finished and I've got this one on the top finished. So that's why you need those little sandwich pieces like that so that you know which ones go where. So I'm going to take my little starter block again. I'm going to put my fabric underneath, needle down. I know it's lightweight thread, but I guess it looks like it broke because it's so lightweight I can't see it. So let's get that thread in there again. Don't hesitate to ask questions.
This isn't a question, but Peggy says that she calls that little trash piece a spider because when it's done,
It looks like a
little
spider.
That's a great idea.
I would too. Where's my spider?
Linda wants to know, do we have a finished product of this so they can visualize as you're going along what you're doing? Or are we just doing it like a surprise?
We don't have a finished one.
So you'll just have to stick with us. And
I've had so many virtual classes this week, I'm lucky to even get the idea together. So no, there's not a finish. I apologize.
So it's kind of like a mystery quilt along.
Well, I guess it kind of is. You'll know what it looks like after we get done today. You just won't have the quilting in it. Some of you have been along on those virtual rides with me this week because I've seen your names out there. We got a lot more coming up. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and raise this needle. And I'll use this cutter this time so I don't have that thread breaking. And what I want to tell you about this is that there are little tricks to this as far as things that will make it easier. Always remember when you're pressing, if it's an option, you're going to press to the light side. So what I'm going to do on this is I'm going to bring my board up here. We just need a lot more space. And so what I'm going to do is, you've heard me talk about setting the seams. So just as it came off of the machine, I'm pressing that right there. Now I don't want to press that piece underneath there. I don't want to crease in that. So I'm just going for the edge. And since I'm pressing to the light, I can just press like that and just right on that edge. And you can see we can get a good crease in that. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And this is my little mini iron by Steam Fast that actually allows me to leave it on all the time. It doesn't go off, and that's why I have the mat, the silicone mat here, because now when I just take this back down to the side, it will sit right like that so that I can stitch on. So now I've got this pressed in those positions to the light. I've got this funny thing in the middle here, and what we're going to be looking at, it looks like an H. I think you would agree to that, or a rabbit with some floppy ears. We are going to open up this shape here, and this one's going to go this way, and this one's going to go that way. That's why I like to press them. And you're just worried, I shouldn't say worried, the only place you're concerned about right now is right there. And so right there in the middle, we are going to put a pin. And then we're going to come over to this side because this is going to be a 3D quilt here, okay? So we're going to come over and we're going to flatten this out and lay it right on this edge. This is why I didn't want you pressing anything. So that's laid right on that edge. And I kind of overwork this a little bit, but it makes it so it comes out just right. So I pin that, and then I pin both layers together. Now you really don't need a pin down here because you know what's going together. And then we're going to come back to this one, and we're going to take that and make it flat, line it right along. Now remember, I've got 3 more of these to do, and since I haven't got them done, you're going to see them done. So if you don't get it the first time, you've got 3 more chances, okay? So now what we're doing is we're taking this. I'll get my spider. Got a new name now. Line it right up with the edge of my foot there. And remember, I don't want to sew over that pen, so I'm going to hold my finger right there. Make sure I've set it to stop down. And this center part, you're going to have all of this here and all this underneath here. So just think about I'm just working with this little area. And if you get to there and that seam wants to turn up, just stop and either use a stylus or the end of your seam ripper and get it so that it lays nice and flat. And now I want to make sure I've got everything back this way so that I can continue with my accurate 1/4 of an inch.
So we have some viewers who'd like to know how you're liking your new Big Brother iron from the one that you've been using.
I absolutely love it. I like both of them. I like this one because it gives me just a little bit more surface. I'm glad you noticed that I've got a new iron there. I still use them both. All right, so here's what we've got. Right there is your 3D, and that's your bow.
Ooh.
Okay, so it's all stitched in, no raw edges, nothing like that. This is why I didn't want you to press it, because you don't want a crease in there that you can't get out. And so the 2 seams we already pressed, which helps us to get it to that point. And then this one we'll need to press this up and down seam. So that's our bow. You want to take that up so they can see it. We're going to make a couple of, 3 more of those. And so you can see what we're going to be doing. Now, this fabric here could be a plain fabric. You could do whatever you want with it. I just want you to remember, keep thinking blue bow, so that when we are working on this, we can, have that.
I see the bow. Like,
There's the bow. Yeah.
Oh.
Some people call this a bow tie quilt when we get this done. We're going to actually mix it. We're not just going to use this. We're going to use some solid squares with it. Now, some of you are already thinking, I wonder what the size of that is. I will tell you it's 9.5 inches. And that's why down underneath where it says of your supplies on fabric 1, that we are going to be making 9.5 inch squares. You're going to need 5 of those 9.5 inch squares. And in my case, it's going to be this fabric. That's my 9.5. Am I correct, or is it my blue?
It's your blue.
Oh, okay, that's right. It's my blue. I think I might have got it mixed up, you guys, because I know I've cut more than 8 5-inch squares for this. So anyway, it doesn't matter. Life goes on. So now if you remember when I did this, I had 2 opposite sandwiches. This one had the blue up, and this one on this side had the blue on the bottom. I hope that's the way it was. I'm pretty sure it was. And then we're going to be taking a blue square. You know what, Megan? We just made a bow tie that was backwards.
Oh, no.
But it doesn't matter.
We'll make another. I'll go cut another while you're doing it the right way.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this fabric. I think what I intended and what I got were just about the opposites, so it doesn't really matter. So I'm taking this fabric, and I am not pressing that seam. I'm laying it underneath here. I'm laying this one on top. The only thing I think we did wrong is we cut wrong. Ha! That's the only thing there was to do before we started. So we're going to stitch through there and stitch this one. And since I talked about doing this in units, I'm going to play this one up here. And I need some more of the blue 5-inch squares, Megan. And I'm going to lay that. Oh, my goodness. Did I miss that? Nope. We're so used to putting right sides together that I just did that. Lay this down on top. And this on top of that. And when we get to the end of this one, we can stitch this one. I just did the first one so you would see where we were headed. And then now I'm going to be waiting for her to cut me a couple more of those blues, because this is what's coming next. Any questions while she's cutting? Okay, it looks like some people have seen that this is called by different names. I've always called it the bow tie block. Some people have said that they call this the 3-seam block or the 5-minute block. Tori says her mother-in-law is 91 and she's made 2 quilts using this type of a block. And so it is a lot of fun. It's easy. You can make it in any size. Just let me warn you, you get down to 3-inch blocks, they're cuter than cute and not so easy. Let's just say it that way. They are not so easy, because the smaller you get, the harder it is to get into that in the center there. So you can make this one in some big blocks too. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to lay that one there. And this one on top. Whoa, 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 whoa. You guys don't do these kind of crazy things, do you? No, I know. You tell me you're just glad to see me make mistakes. I hear that all the time. Because we figure it out, right?
Oh, Kim asked a great question. What is that spider, leader, whatever that little piece of fabric you were calling it? What is that for?
It's to keep your machine from eating your fabric. So like right now I've got fabric underneath there so the threads are all attached. But I want to take and make it so that it just starts smoothly. And if I just start on the corner of my fabric, sometimes the machines like to take that fabric down in underneath. And once you've had that happen, you'll know exactly why we're doing it. It just makes it easier. I know that this machine it hardly ever eats my fabric. I can tell you that. I don't have any machines that hardly ever eat my fabric. But I'm not taking the chance, and I want you to develop some habits that make sense for you, and maybe your machine is one of those that kind of likes to eat the fabric. So you can see here I'm pulling this out and cutting that to leave my threads a little longer, and I have made an additional force of one side of that. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to again press these seams open. I won't bring it up here. I'll just go over and do it. I did it a while ago when I had 2 of them, but it's actually easier with just one. So I'm pulling my iron over right beside my speaker, so my microphone's here. So ask me some questions so that I can help you get going on this. This is what it looks like after I pressed it, so that the seam goes to the dark. Oh my goodness, Donelle. I'm not gonna, there you go. Seam goes to the dark. Megan, you want to come and see if we've got any questions?
Oh, but it's not a question, but Nanine said that her machine does eat the fabric, so that's good to have a starter. So she's glad to have that piece of advice. If you, Linda wants to know, if you use a single hole stitch plate, that also, I guess it's not a question.
Yeah, that helps.
That also helps.
That also helps. You have to make sure that you don't need to move your needle to get your center, but yeah, that also helps. Okay, I like to do things when they're in this little mass production type thing, and so you can see we've done that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take all of these and make them look like that so that they're all in the same position. Because now what we're going to be doing is we're working with these colors. This one's going to go on the top so that it lays out like that. So I'm going to take the top one and I'm going to take another square of the printed and I'm going to put that down. So I need to get this right up against that edge. Now, I know some people have even done this technique with their serger. I prefer my sewing machine because it's easier to take your pins in and out, and I don't think it's that much faster with the serger, but you can do that. You can see there my machine didn't eat my fabric. I wanted you to see I could do that.
So some of them thought that you pressed to the light side.
Yeah, I probably did. You press to the dark. I always press to the dark. I don't know what I did on the first one. I pressed it to the dark, but I probably said light. So kind of my day today. So
what should they press it to?
Press to the light. I mean the dark. Don't.
I'm going to type it in here. Press to
If you think of it this way, it's the Darth Vader method. Press to the dark side. Now you'll remember it.
We're just making sure they were all paying attention, right?
I don't know. Lay this out here. Since this is on the top, this one will be facing up to you. And on the bottom, this one will lay on top of that. And the blue, which I'm going to throw over here from my magic pressing fairy, because it looks like it needs a little bit of a pressing. You got to teach them young how to press so when they are helping you out later, they know what they're doing. She's going to hate that I said that, but...
Oh, I've had many lessons on the difference in pressing versus ironing.
Yeah, pressing versus ironing. Ironing's what you do to clothes. Quilts and piecing are all part of the process of pressing. Okay, so now we've got this finished here. And I'm going to take those apart. And remember, it looks like this. So I'm just going to be pressing those. And I'm going to press to the dark side. So I'll put this up here so you can see that again while I'm doing my pressing. Remember, I press so that I'm setting my seam. And then it gets pressed to the dark side.
Debbie wants to know if we could show them pressing, so maybe on
Sure.
one of them I can turn the camera around.
Yeah, we can just leave it down here and we can just turn that camera around if that works. Then they can see my little pressing station.
There, perfect.
So this is pressed to the dark side, and then I'm simply laying this back so that you can see that. Thanks for asking, Debbie. So that now this one is pressed and ready for the next step. Some people do this without pressing in the middle of it, and I kind of think it makes it better if you just take the time to each time press. So you can see I'm setting that seam, and because this is going to get pressed to the dark side, I'm just going to go ahead and lay that back like that, and that will press it to the dark side. You don't even need to press any further than that because that piece is not going to lay back there. So I've got this one pressed, and this is where it kind of looks like that H, as I was telling you. Did I not put it in the right spot?
There you go.
Looks like an H. So I've got two more real quick here, and I don't know if I'm going to need 4 or I'm going to need 5 of these. And I think it's probably the best way to tell you that is it's because I'm going to try and see which layout I like the best. I'm either going to have the bows in the center and the outside, because this is going to be a big 9 patch, or I'm going to have the solids in the center and the outside, and it will be a 9 patch that way. Oh, that's the one that's already pressed. Okay, so we're done with the pressing. I should say finished with the pressing. So we're coming back over here. And at this point, remember what we're going to do is we're just going to open up this center and match those seams. And because I've already pressed it, they're going to want to go the right or the correct direction, maybe I should say, by putting those so that they nest. Now, I will tell you, nesting is not something that's ever going to show on this one because that's all down underneath that piece. But you want to get it in the right place so that this out here on this end meets in the right place. And then just lay this back, and this is where you can see if you got little tiny ones, if you got 3-inch squares, you're working with a lot less fabric there. And I'm going to go ahead and put a pin here. And I want to pull this out so that it's flat, because as you can see, it turns under and pleats down here.
They're watching real close because I think you pressed one of them to the light side. Don't worry, guys, we'll find it and we'll fix it.
Well, that's to the dark and that's to the dark, so we're good on that one.
You guys are just really observant today. That's awesome. I hope my kids next week when I start school are going to be that observant.
So I'm coming to that pen. I don't want to stitch in it. I want my needle to stop down to help me. And I'm going to see how I can't just lay this out flat right here because that's in there like that. So I just kind of have to sew what I can get to. And this is where I'm going to find my seam ripper and hold that in place. Get my pin out. And then I'm just going to work from this side because that can then pull in that way. We'll make sure everything's good underneath here before I pull that pin out. There we go. Now you'll notice that that was just a little bit off there. If I make it even, oh boy, now I'm going to tell you something you're just going to laugh at if you've never heard it. When I first started, right, I shouldn't say first started, but just about 1 inch back there, when I had these two pieces, they were off about that much. Okay, you can see that's a pretty good little amount. But what I did was I took that and I pulled it down to meet, which meant there was more fabric on the bottom. And we call that baggy bottoms. And if you make this meet like you want, because it's on the bottom, the feed teeth will ease it in, and it will come out even like you planned for it to. So baggy bottoms, if you're ever doing something and you're easing it in, and it doesn't seem like it wants to work, put the baggier side on the bottom. And I do that a lot of times when I'm working with projects that have multiple layers that it seems like one has shrunk or grown, whichever one you're looking at. It makes it so it works. So if you'll remember that, especially with cotton fabrics, it's an easy fix. I know a lot of you may be new to quilting or you're just getting into it. And that's why I thought actually showing you how I got this, these blocks together would be good because there's so much you can learn in all of this. So on this one, I haven't pinned the other end yet, but I do this a lot of times. I just get it started, and I'm going to stitch up to this. And now it's like having a third hand. I don't have to worry about that flipping and flopping around because I've got my third hand here to hold everything in place, being my needle.
Yeah, not my hands.
So I haven't stitched over that pin yet. You would have heard it clunk if I did. So now that I've got that down there and I've got this one ready to lay right nice and flat, I think you guys are right in there with me, so you can see it, how that's laying nice and flat there. And then all I'm going to do is lay this one on top and start stitching. Now I've got about a 1/2 inch here to go, and now I've caught all of that fabric, so I'm looking down here, and you can see it's off again just a little bit. So I'm going to push that bottom one back underneath there, hold this in place, and just lay that down. And those feed teeth will just even everything out.
As you taught me in 4-H, match what you know matches first.
Yep, that was a little phrase that all my 4-H sewers, because Megan and I are even still continue to be 4-H leaders, and that's one thing that I always taught them. Match what you know matches first. Pin it and then move on. So I'm going to put this right in place right there because I know that that's the first thing that needs to match. And then I'm coming back here, and after you've done a couple of these, it's almost like they know what to do. I don't think that's the case, but after you've got yourself trained pretty well, then it seems like it's just that much easier. And whoever said, I think her name was Tori, said her grandmother had done some of these. This is a great one for scrap buster. So if you're one of those people that have, like after you've got your things finished, what you got fabric, you decided to cut them up into something the same. Some people cut them up into 3-inch blocks or whatever. Maybe you've cut some stuff up into some 5-inch blocks. This is definitely something that works for scrappiness. That's a good one to do.
Lillian wants to know, she's one of our friends from, I think, the UK, wants to know what 4-H is.
Oh, well, that's a great question, too. Lillian, 4-H is where we start kids who are 10 years old into a program that is for youth, and most every state in the U.S. has it. And they can go into sewing projects, they can go into food processing, baking,
They even expand into like Legos, and there's animals.
Yeah, there's animals, agriculture, all kinds of stuff. One year my son was the winner of the corn stalk. He grew corn, in the field. They at the time for 4-H, they go out and they look for a great corn stalk and have to dig all the roots out and take it in with the roots, and they are judged on that. So here you guys are right. I came to my last one and it's pressed incorrectly. So I'm going to go over here and press it correctly. You guys were very observant.
Tammy asked what fabric line this from. I just went to check, and the printed one is from Timeless Treasures. The other one is just something we had in our scraps, so I can't tell you what it's from. Sorry, Tammy.
We just went and looked what we had in scraps today. I was planning to use a solid when I came up upon these, so...
Oh, Debbie's right. It's kind of similar to Girl Scouts, but it's for all boys and girls ages 10 to 18.
And some of them are 19 when they get out because of the timing that it starts and whatever. But to finish off with what Lillian's question was, then they submit their projects and they get judged on them. And I can tell you, I was never in 4-H because back when I was in would have been 4-H age, it was considered to be something that the kids from the county did, the country did. And so then that's definitely all changed because it was mainly animals. And now they have all these, as Megan said, they even have a Legos category that they can do. So lots of different options. And I always tell my 4-H parents that 4-H is that program where it's called family, because you're never going to get a kid turned loose with a 4-H project that they can actually complete with any kind of confidence if they have to do it by themselves, because the idea is they need to have some direction. So photography, one of my girls that is now a sophomore in college went into photography and it started out in 4-H. Her photography continually went to state fair and she just, did great with it. And so now she's a sophomore in college and that's her major. And before all this COVID hit, she had the opportunity. She was going to be going to Ireland for the month of May to do photography over there. But obviously we had some things in her end. But great program. If you have any grandkids or kids that you can get involved with, it's something, like I said, it's a family affair. We had some projects that were mom projects and some projects that were dad projects, because building a birdhouse is a dad project at our house. So
I always tell our 4-Hers that it's a good opportunity to expand with, like, if you want to go into cooking, it's a great thing to see if you like it without...
It's a testing ground, so to speak. If you don't like it, you don't have to do it again. Megan did clothing and sewing. We even have a category called Sewing for Fun. The night before is not the time to start the project for Sewing for Fun, but sometimes that happened. But anyway, that's a joke there. But it is a project where you can test the waters to see if you really like it. We did foods for like 2 years, and then we decided that was not us. So when they said that the cookies were 30 seconds too done, even though Mom's a home ec teacher, it was like, I'm not messing with that. We're done with this. So foods was not our forte, but clothing and sewing and all of those projects were.
Our 4-H people are coming on because they're telling us what all the H's stand for.
Yep, heart, health, hands, home, I think. I know, I just got them out of order. Head, heart. There it is, head, heart,
hands, and health.
And health.
Okay. So we do have some questions on your green grid glider. We've got some people who don't know what it is and how it's clinging, and so if you want to take a second to just explain that.
I will, but I'm going to show you that we now have bows. We have bows. Now, I will be later, not with this iron because I don't have water in it, but I will give this a shot of steam to get this out of there. I won't set it down on there, but I will give it a shot of steam. Now, you may want to go ahead and just press that, but what I'm going to tell you, if you do, get out a fluffy towel, a light colored fluffy towel, and set that underneath so you don't have to press so hard down in, because we don't want those seams from underneath leaving an indentation. But those are our bows that we're going to be working with. So how many do I have? 5 of them?
Yeah.
I do have 5 bows. So I'm going to let you guys decide which way we're going to put this together. And while Megan is pressing the seams that I haven't done yet, we are going to talk about the mat, since you ask. And what this is the grid glider that I will absolutely have to have next week when I do my quilting. But this week, I'm using it because this is a complete cutout here that allows my feed teeth to be up, and it gives me more lines here to line up with. And I can tell you, this makes it so much easier, because not only does your fabric slide when you're doing your quilting, but it slides so much easier when you're doing your sewing also. So that's the grid glider. It is a cling. You can see I've got my extension table underneath there with my drawer with my supplies. And I took the time to get everything lined up right on with my line here. So I've got my 1/4 of an inch. And if you joined us late, I'll show you what I did with that. I set my needle down in there. And what I wanted to do was get this so it's lined up with my needle. Now, it's easier with that foot up, so I'm just going to bring that foot up. I can't even get it under there. I'm going to bring it up this way. And now my needle is down, and I can get this lined up. So now my 1/4 of an inch is exact, because I've got my needle lined up with the center here. You can see right here, this is darker, and that's to be with your needle. So I'm one of those people that I'll do anything to make sewing easier. When I taught my middle school kids, which were beginners, and even when I'm teaching people now that are learning to quilt, I tell you, don't mess with watching the needle. Find a place over here. And there are all kinds of things. You can get a magnet guide that you can put over on the side. You can do whatever, but you don't have to be constantly focused on this area if you've got some sort of an edge over here. Now, our circles and straights tool comes with a piece This is the Circles and Straights tool. It comes with this piece from Sew Steady that you have a little backing on that you peel off. And so what I can do is I could set this right here. I don't want to get it on my feed teeth, but I could set that right there. And so now when I'm feeding a piece of fabric, I can feed it right up against that so that I keep it straight. So that's the straights part of this. Now you wouldn't always have to have it clear down here in front, but because of my feed teeth and the fact that I'm doing 1/4 of an inch, you can see how sticky this is. I need to have it so it's in front because otherwise it would be on my feed teeth. Now anytime I get greater than 3/8 out here, I can put it back here. So I want to make sure I put my little piece right back on top of that sticky so that it will be good the next time. So anything that you can do to make it easier. One thing I forgot to tell you is when I'm piecing, I set my machine stitch length to 2.0. That makes a smaller stitch. I had that already set up before we began today, but when you're piecing for a quilt, it's good to do smaller because we don't use any back stitching.
So how often, Sandy's asking, do you need to polish the slider?
The glider here, yes. I polish that probably every 3rd time I polish my table. Now, if you notice that your fabric's not sliding, it's time to get it out there. Now, I had my polish rag out yesterday for one of the classes I was doing, and this actually is still out because the fact that it still has something on it, and I didn't want to put it away, so I can just glide that right over because it still has a bit of that polish on it.
And show them what the polish is. Sue wants to
this
know.
is table polish, table and insert polish. I can polish my acrylic. I should never use any Windex on the acrylic. So I can polish my acrylic to keep it in good shape and keep it gliding. And I can also do that right here on this. I'll just take a second and show you for those of you that haven't seen it. So I'm going to show you here. It says table and insert polish. So even if you have just an insert around your machine in a cabinet, this is not going to need very much. That's plenty. I mean, that's about the size of a pea. And all I'm going to do is take that same cloth rather than pull out that new one, and I'm just going to polish this around. And you're basically wiping it on and wiping it off. And that just makes this glide so much easier. I had a question from a couple weeks ago that I might as well address right now. I don't know if I have my piece in here. I don't. But I had a lady tell me that her table walks away from her sewing machine. Megan, I think right over in that table there's a little box that says table lock on it. If you'll pull out the drawer. Yep, I see it. It's on the bottom side here. This says table lock. Mine's never been open. But if you have a table that's walking away from you, most of the tables come with this. If not, you can get it separate. And it's this little piece right here, and it has this little suction cup. And so before you get started, you want to put the suction cup in it so you know the orientation of the piece. So it's going to be like this, and this is going to go on your underneath of your table, but it goes on. If you follow my hand, it goes back in the right-hand corner. So this is going to go to the bottom of the table, and this is a piece of Velcro. You're going to take one of these off and stick it on here. Then you're going to peel the other piece off and then put your table on so that wherever that is, this will hold the table from moving away from your machine. So that's what a table lock is like. That's why they come with the machines. Now, like I said, I've never had any issues with mine walking away, probably because there's so much stuff around it, it can't walk anywhere. But that's what a table lock is, and if yours does walk away, that's a good way to use it. Any other questions?
Yes, I have one from, I think it's Nini. I hope I said your name correct. She's got the Sew Steady table, but wants to know if the accessory tray is available as an add-in. So
this tray actually comes with the wish tables, and it's not available as an add-in because the bracket that holds it in place And I think you can see me point up there. The bracket that holds that in place is part of the leg system. Now, you can get an add-on table that fits around. Can we pull this back here? It will fit, I don't have one here to show you, but it will fit on this leg. And so you can see the leg down here. It looks like a little small rectangular frying pan, so to speak, and it has a little hole in the top of it that fits on this leg, so that you can put it on the leg and you can just pull it out and get your stuff out of it and push it, spin it back in. And I don't see why you couldn't even get two of them if you've got a big enough table. So anyway, it's just called the add-on drawer, I think it's called. And you can get that, and it will just be something that you can put onto the leg. It's very simple to do.
That is on the Sew Steady website?
That would be on the Sew Steady website, or, anybody that sells the templates and stuff. It's all a part of that, yeah. Great question, because having those little drawers and whatever make it so much easier to keep things organized. All right, so I said you guys were going to help me, so don't get that too fixed there, Megan, because I'm going to let them decide, and I got to lay it out here. So we are either going to put this together with this being the big piece, or we're going to put it together with this one being the big piece. So, I don't know what your thinking is. I really think, because I know where we're headed with our quilting, that I like the blue one the best. So I think that's what we're going to do, is the blue one. Now, the question is, do we want to have this, and then this, and then a repeat of that, or are we going to put it so... Because, see, I'm asking you, and I'm getting some vibes, I guess. I don't know if I am or not, as to what. And I think I like this the best.
So that would be a 5. You have a 9 patch, but 5 of them will be the...
5 of them would be the bows.
Well, I think since you made the bows, you should use
think
all the bows.
We should do that. So here's what we're going to do. And some of you may have never seen this kind of thing before. And we're just trying to work here. So... we're going to use out here on the edge, Megan.
Okay, and I'm going to pull this out so I can come back even farther.
So here's what we're going to do. And you guys may want to draw a little picture on your back there. This is going to be row 1, right over here, like that. Can I see that?
I can get most of it.
That's good. And then this is going to be row 2. So it's going to have a bow in the middle. And the reason I'm doing this is because I don't know if y'all have seen this method of putting things together, but it's so easy. So this is going to look like this. So see our bows coming across this way. And then we've got a bow up here. And we've got a bow down here. Oh, this is going to be fun. Oh, I already see ideas. Okay, now.
Some of them are thinking the light. Can you try the light just so we see? Because they think the bows stand out better with the light color.
They may, but our our quilting from next week won't stand out on those light pieces.
Oh, I forgot about that part.
Okay, I think we're going to, here it is. I was trying to find it. I said, I think we're going to have to cut some more. There we go. Like this. And I'll do this. We can do this if you want. I just know that the embroidery won't stand out as much. Or I've said that twice now. And you guys, I couldn't tell you when the last time I embroidered. I template quilt all the time. So, what are we thinking? I think I like what you guys said.
Your bows look really good on the light. I think we go with people's choice.
I think we do too. I definitely think we do. All right, so here's what we're going to do. Love it. We're going to lay this row, which is the second row, over on top of the first row. And the only one I have to make sure of is that bow there. Okay? And then I'm going to take this row and I'm going to pick it up. So this is in the bottom, this is my middle one, and this is my top one. And I'm going to put a pin in this side. Eleanor Burns taught me this years ago because that's the one that we're going to be sewing. And I'm laying that aside. And I'm going to pick up this one. And I'm going to match up that top. And we're going to stitch this together. Always have that top thread underneath your foot when you start. Make sure you've got your seams like you want them. And we're going to do our 1/4 of an inch.
Somebody asked earlier, do you ever use a scant 1/4 of an inch?
I don't, because I'm using the lightweight 60 weight thread. That's the reason they've always said a scant. Now I'm going to check this. The reason they say a scant is because with that heavier thread, you cannot press that seam back to get a 1/4 of an inch. So that's why I don't need to do a scant, is because I'm using 60 weight thread to piece. And also, it helps to do that pressing to set the seams first. So now I'm coming up on this one, checking it again to make sure it's going the right way. You know what's going to be hard for me, you guys, is waiting a week
to not quilting. Yep.
But I promise I'll wait, and that'll give you time to get yours together so that you can then join us in the quilting. So now I'm at the end of that. And I'm going to go ahead, and Megan was asking me a question, so I did this in the wrong order. I apologize. So I'm laying this back out. You can do a whole quilt this way. And this is going to stay connected. I don't cut it apart. So I'm pulling this one back. And I'm going to take, I hope you can see that bow, and I'm going to lay it over here. And so now I will be putting this row together. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to match that bottom. Lay this one in place. So some said they couldn't hear. Are you hearing better now? Yes or no? This is my next one in this pile. I lay it across here. If it had a direction, whether it was a stripe or something, I would recommend that when you do your first time of doing the bows, you don't use a stripe, because this corner here or that particular piece can be a little tricky. It's a cool way to do it after you're onto it, because that bow, that centerpiece in a stripe, is really interesting. I picked up a stripe to use, but then I said, no, I don't think that's going to be a good one for today.
Janice wants to know what brand of 60 weight you're using.
I use Quilters Select. It's the one that Alex Anderson recommends. There are tons of 60 weights out there. You can do whatever you want, but I have had the best success with that. Aurifil makes an 80 weight that you can use in your bobbin. Quilters Select also makes an 80 weight. A lot of companies now are making a variety of threads in different weights. And I will tell you, once you've used a 60 weight for piecing and you start to quilt over this seam, you're going to love it. Now, this is all joined together. It's all kind of like spaghetti right now, but it's all joined together. So my whole block is ready to go. Before I move on, I need to press. Now I'm going to tell you, I am going to press to the solids this time because that's the way it wants to go. So in other words, this is a lighter fabric. It's not going to matter, but this is going to lay better because this one will be out and this one will be in. Could I press it to the one with the blue? Absolutely, but it is that much of an advantage, not on this fabric because I can't see the shadowing through. So I'm going to flip around here to my pressing area, and I'm actually going to take my iron and set my mat over here so I've got a bigger space. I set my seam, and then since it's going to that solid one, there we go. I'm going to go this direction. This one over here, set the seam.
When you called that spaghetti, Patsy said that her friend Bonnie calls that webbing.
Okay. Is she the same one that's talking about a spider?
Might have a theme going on there.
I might. Maybe rather than buttons and bows, we'll call this Charlotte's Web. So when you're setting the seam, it doesn't matter which way, you know, as long as you're on the wrong side. And then I'm going to lay this out. This is obviously easier at a big ironing board, but I can do it right here. This is not part that I would normally do here. I would take it to my big board. And if you've never had a big board ironing board, what that is, you can Google it. And then I would talk to your sewing local quilting store and ask them to order one for you. But what it is a big board is an ironing board that sits on top of your regular ironing board, but it's a long rectangle. It's like 23 inches wide by 59 inches long. I even have a cutting mat that goes on top of mine, so I could use it if I wanted to take it to a retreat. I could use it as a cutting system. So it's really handy. I don't know what I ever did without it, so when you're pressing quilt backings and whatever, it just makes it so much easier. Now I've only got 2 more seams here and we'll be ready. So surprise me, Megan. Tell me what my border is going to be, because that's our next thing.
Your border is going to be that print fabric.
Okay. That may need to change to blue. What do you think? Do we have enough? Because I think that would be way too much print. So since we changed, we'll go back to 3 inches. Oops, forgot to set it. All right. So now all I need to do is match my seams, because as you can see here, everything is still all together. Put this back up on my mat. I hate to interrupt you, Megan, but I got to get back so they can see. So what we're going to do is we're just going to match this up as we go. So I know that down here, at this seam right here, we want one to go one direction and one to go the other direction. I'm holding that in place. This one is just going to lay flat. And underneath here is where I have another seam, so I want to get this so that it's laying right along the edge there. And if you want to pin this, pin away, not a problem. And again, these seams will go opposite directions, so they'll do what we call nest. Again, you could put a pin there, but because they're going opposite directions, they're going to match up pretty much exactly like you want them to. Let's see how we did here. If you can see that right there, you can see that all that fabric, it's laying nice and flat. Over here, got the same. I'm lucky that that came together like that. All right, so let's go to the other seam, because in this case we only have 9 blocks, so we're just going to flip this around and do the other one. You can put together a full-size quilt this way. If you had a block of the month that you were putting together, you can lay it all out in one place and get it all nice and ready to go and do this same method. Just don't forget, you don't want to cut these seams apart. Just so I know what we're kind of how we're doing here. If that's new to you, just by your name, send a love or something so that we can kind of see that that method is something that's new to you. So we like to share new information, and that's why I'm asking that. All righty. I like the fact that you guys were willing to tell me you didn't like my colors, because I like this better.
And your quilting studio fairy got you the blue borders.
Awesome. I'll let you guys have my fairy sometime, but she doesn't come cheap, let me tell you. All right, last seam.
We got lots of new ones in here. That's so great.
Good, good, good. Now, while Megan's over there pressing these seams at the big ironing board, because it'd definitely be easier. Let me see first before you go. Ooh, you guys are going to love this when you see it. I just want to make sure everything was going good.
Which way are the seams getting pressed?
Just
towards the middle, towards the outside?
Towards the middle,
Okay.
Yes, towards the middle. All right, so what I want to talk to you about right now is something that a lot of people do not realize. And that is, there's several steps to this. First of all, this is plain down here. It just looks like a regular fabric. But if I turn that over, you can see that's my selvage. Okay? That means that that's where the fabric, what the edge of it was when the yarns that were being put in this, and I say yarns because that's the technical term, but obviously it's the threads, but it's when they turned and went back the other way. And so this has a different texture. You can feel it even though it's printed that way. You don't want to use it in your quilt. The other end is a no-brainer. You wouldn't use it in it because that's like that. So what I want to do is I want to get rid of both of those just to start, because that means I can use either end, whichever way I need to, and I won't have any issues with it. So I'm going to get my little cutting mat here that I can lay this down on top of, and I'm going to get a ruler, a straight edge, line that right across there, and lo and behold, out of reach is my cutter.
It walked away again.
All right, so I'm just going to cut this off. Some of you saw that move. I should have used my one that has stable tape on the back of it. I have one that has stable tape so it doesn't move. There we go. All right, so both ends of this, and I have 4 of those because these are going to be my borders. But here is where some people mess things up, and then they have issues with their border. And that is, they just take their border piece here, line it up, and start sewing, and just keep sewing. and come down to the other end, and wherever it finishes, they cut it off. Well, that will cause you to have ripples in your border, because in this piece right here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 seams. So this is going to be pretty stable. But this piece has no seams, so it can stretch. And that's why you get ripples in your border. So what we want to do with our quilt is we want to come in either to the middle, if there's a seam in the middle, or in the case of this one, I'm coming into the first, where the first row joins. Here's a block, I'm laying it back, and I'm going to measure this. Now normally, I would measure this right over on my cutting mat where it's long. But since I want you to see what I'm doing, I'm going to take the time to do it right here in front of you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this up so that you can see right over here. I'm going to have this so that I put my pen right at 10 inches. And then I'm going to move that over, and I'm going to lay that seam on here. Like I said, I would normally be at a cutting mat, so that I would have it in one long, or at least just 2 places. And there's my other 10. And so now I'm coming back over here to the middle, and I want to see exactly what I have. So I have 27 and a quarter. Now don't be one of those people that goes, it's just a quarter. It's 27 and a quarter. So I had 10 and 10 and 7 and a quarter. So I'm going to take my piece of fabric here that I have cut the selvage off of, and I'm going to do the same thing. Again, I would normally do this over on my mat. Now I need to cut 2 of these because I'm putting on 2 sides. And if you're not aware of it, in most all cases, we put on sides of the quilt's borders and then the top and the bottom. Unless, of course, you're doing something with a corner treatment or whatever, and then you have to go by that. So I've got my center. I want to make sure I'm at 27 and a quarter. So I'm going to get that mat again. And all I'm going to be doing is I'm going to lay this down. I'm going to get the one that has the grips on it. And I'm going to lay this right on top of there. That's 27 and a quarter. And I'm going to cut that off. Now after I have put my 2 sides on, I'll press that to the border. And then I will measure it so I'll know what my top and bottom is. So you got me another 27 and a quarter, right? Yeah. All right, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this one and I'm going to pin it at the top. I'm going to come down and I'm going to pin it at this first seam, and then I'm going all the way to the other end. And when you start doing this, you will find that you have so much greater success with everything fitting together and laying nicely. I've got a quilt on the wall over here that I could show you that is, it's a quilt that took me a lot of time to do the center of. It's one of the big stars, but I blew it when I put on my outer borders. And so the borders kind of cup in. So that's not a good thing to have happen. So then here, I'm just going to be able to get that to lay nice and flat. I've got so much here around me that I'm trying to move some of it so that I don't knock it on the floor. So let's go ahead and set this down.
Directions written yet.
I don't have, and I don't really at this point plan to write directions for this one.
So you can find the handout for the cutting and the
Right.
materials, but you'll have to
Right.
rewatch this video.
And you can Google bow tie block, and you'll see several different ones on there. Because I have a bow tie block, I have it at my office, but I didn't have it here, and I didn't want to go down there today, so I just Googled it to find the instructions on how to do it. It's not going to be any different than what you just did and watch me, because it's not going to be written instructions. It's just going to be visual instructions.
So Sue wants to know, can you use the same border method if you miter the corners?
If you miter them, I'll try to address that next week, because I actually have a mitering tool that allows you to miter perfect miters. And the reason that I designed that tool was simply because of the same reason I just told you. I have this beautiful quilt on the wall that has these cupped in. I keep looking at it. You guys can't see it, but I keep looking at it. And it has these cupped in edges. And so that's why I came up with this tool, and it works perfect. Now, I have a short one, so this must be the one. And
27 and a quarter.
And I'm going to test it. I'm going to measure it, because that's the easiest way. Because even a quarter of an inch off is going to make it so that it's not going to, and that's 27 and a quarter. She's over here high-fiving herself, so she's thrilled that she got that right. Anyway, make sure you're on the opposite side. I'm going to start again. Like I said, I use my machine as my third hand. I'm going to lay this in place, and I'm going to pin that. I'm going to come clear down to the opposite end. And I think these are the things that make your quilting step up just a notch, knowing how you can eliminate some of those things that seem like the best way to do it is just, put it on there, stitch it on, and cut off the rest, and that's just really not. It doesn't make things lay nice and flat.
Michelle says she's made a bow tie block using the snowballing method, but this is 3D, and she's liking this.
Yeah, you can do that. Am I sewing? Yep, I am. And almost.
Lightweight thread.
Yeah. And you can see as I'm doing this, it's just laying right on top of there. I know many long arm quilters that have people bring their quilts to them, and I mean, they just go crazy because they don't know what to do, because the borders are so wavy and so much extra fabric. And sometimes I've even heard them say that they had to take the time to take the borders off and correct them, because there was no way that they could do that so that it would work correctly. Now, you could probably do the math and figure out how much more we need on this one. And so I'm going to come over here before we go press it. So this adds 2 3/4, which makes sense to the end. But we also took off a quarter. So that actually adds, it takes it down to 2 1/2. So we should have added 5 inches. So
Pressing to the border.
please, yes. And so she asked if it was pressing to the border, and I said yes. So what we should have is 27 1/4 plus 5. So I think it should be 32 1/4. When she gets it finished, we'll measure up here and see exactly what it is.
It's very flying from her.
It's okay. I'm just wondering why these are damp.
From the spray starch.
Okay, so you can see now how this lays nice and flat on there. We don't have any of that puckering. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get just a little crisper seam down here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to be measuring what this distance is. And again, just because I want you to see what I'm doing, I'm going to do it right here. And I don't just hold my fingernail in place. I'm going to put a pin there so that I can move that pin over to the center, keeping this all laying nice and flat, because you probably know the measure twice, cut once rule. So there's 30. So it's 32 and a half. I think, is that what I said? I either said 32 and a quarter or 32 and a half, but it's 32 and a half that we are going to have these cut. So now I'm going to put that on this direction. While she's cutting that, just want you to see, can you see those points there, how they all come together? I already know what we're doing in here for quilting, and I already know what we're doing there, but we might have some real fun in this area right here because of the way this is done. So 32 and a half. Let me quickly do her again, but I know it's no more than that.
I hope not, because I just cut it.
Yep, 32 and a half. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this piece, again, just like we did before, and I'm going to show you what might happen. You can see that little difference right there. I don't do anything with that. I'm just simply going to start up here at the edge and get that part lined up. And when I get to there, I just go like that. Don't take the time to cut that off, because then you start messing with all kinds of things. So you're just going to straighten that out kind of as you get to it. I'm going to bring this over here. I think maybe you can see this. I see why you guys were having no sound. It was underneath the little thing. I hope you guys can hear sound now. All right, so I'm lining this up, but not stretching anything, just to get it started. And then I'm going to come down here to the seam. This little guy was underneath that.
Oh no, I'm glad you found that.
Whoa! Woo, you guys saw that. You got right on the end of that. I almost stitched over that pin.
That's a big no-no in this house. No stitching over pins.
Now, I've only got one more and a border to stitch, so I definitely want to come down here and pin it at the end so that I lay that in place. I love having this line. I know you guys can't see it like I can, but it's so nice to have that line on there to be able to stitch, because when you're lined up right here, that's all fine and good, but if you can just line up from clear out here on the edge and keep that good and straight.
So Margie noticed that you've got your binding on your borders on the top. She usually does on the bottom so that...
Right, and that's a good thing to do because it does take in, but the reason I did it this way is I really didn't want anything messing with this and taking in any extra, because I had measured them to be exact. Now at this point, this is where this is going to be. You could have stopped this right here and actually put a piece of this fabric to have a cornerstone if you wanted to. Or we could have mitered them. Next week, I promise, I'll show you my mitering tool and how to miter that, because it's not only great for mitering, but it's great for putting attic windows blocks together. So last side here.
Noelle wants to know what size glider you have, but I think the gliders are all one size, aren't
No,
they?
there are different size gliders. This is the large one. The small one is a peach color, and that one is more for smaller tables. Now, one of the questions this week, and let me stop here so that you can see. You notice this is sticking out a little bit. I have moved it over to meet my fabric here, and no one's ever going to know the difference. Don't start just hacking at your quilt. One of the questions this week is, a lady had a machine that her glider right here was turned up because it was back against her machine, which is, in my case, I've got about 4 more inches. If you've got it so it's like this and you're sure you've got this on correctly, it's not upside down, I take this to the cutting mat and just take your quarter, or you take your ruler and your rotary cutter and cut that right off, because you're never going to gain space down here. You want this laying flat, because if this is flipped up, it's just really hard to use. And whoever asked that question may actually be out there today, and I hope I answered it, because there's no reason to leave that all sticking out there. Now I have to show you, I've been sewing at a slow speed just because I didn't want you to be dizzy, but there's no reason you can't sew at a faster speed. It sounds like my foot is walking away from me, so let me get it back here so it's not making so much
Just
noise.
Don't get a speeding ticket now.
Speeding tickets. When I'm stitching, we should be okay. Now I'm going to sew to this one. Now, you do not have to sew that fast, but if you've been sewing for 100 years like I have, and I will tell you, my mother doesn't sew, would not know what side of the sewing machine to set on. My grandma sewed for what I will call utility purposes. That was hem and pants and that kind of thing. So if you don't have a rich history, don't think that that's something that, oh, well, I can't do it because nobody in my family ever did. We also find that a lot of times it skips a generation. So anyway, I encourage you to sew. It's so much fun. So now I've got this all finished. I'm going to let Megan press that to the outside, and then we're going to show you what the whole thing looks like. And next week we will be doing the quilting. And while she's doing that, let me again show you the templates. I think you'll find this is a fun little project that you can do in, an afternoon, evening, whatever, once you get going with it. And so that way you can make it as gifts. It can be done in Christmas colors because Christmas has bows. But this is the Spinifex number 4 from the sampler set. So if you have the sampler set templates, that's the Spinifex number 4. And then you can use other templates. You could use the Spinning Wheels 36 for what we're going to do next week. But if you have it, it's Circles on Quilts wreath number 16, and it says with echo because there is an echo up here. And I did one earlier today. It didn't iron or press the lines off so that you can kind of get an idea what it looks like. And that's what that particular design is going to look like, and it's going to fit in those blocks. And that's with the echo around it. So, as I said, you can use other templates. I'll show you how you can use that Spinning Wheels 36. And if you want to, get the quilt, the wreath, I just want you to see other templates. So I'm going to trade Megan, and she's going to get the camera here, and we're going to show you what the whole thing looks like.
There we go.
All right, so there is our buttons and bows. I actually like to see it like this. That's the way I think it looks the best. Next week we will have sandwiched this. I am a spray person, so I'll spray that together. I am going to use that blue dot on the back so that when I bring the front, I'm going to show you that tool. I have a mitering tool, and I also have a border mitering tool. And so what we're going to be doing is bringing the back to the front to get a nice faux binding. And some of you have seen that before. So if you want to just come in close, Megan, to that center one there, we're going to show them that and sign off for today. If you have any other comments or questions, now would be a good time to add those because we'll see them when we go back and look over the video. So thanks for joining us, everyone. We'll see you next week. Bye for now.